Welcome back, everybody, to a new season of eXhuming the X-Files here on the Outpost Unknown YouTube channel. Every Friday, we drop a new episode of the show, so don't forget to hit that like and subscribe to make sure you keep in the know about what our two favorite FBI agents are up to week to week. My name is Matthew. I'm joined once again by Jeremy.
Hey, everyone.
And we ended on a cliffhanger in Season 2. Do you remember what happened?
Mulder was down in a trailer full of alien dead bodies, and they tossed a firebomb in after him into the only way out, and it was just gutting flame. He was clearly dead from something.
For sure. So now we have the Season 3 premiere called The Blessing Way, which is pretty much part 2. And I did note here on my notes that this is the 50th episode of The X-Files. Do you know how many total episodes of The X-Files there are?
Okay, so we're just at the beginning of season 3, and we're at 50, so there's 7. It's like a billion episodes, man.
218 total episodes of this show. We are not even a quarter of the way through.
All right, well,
it's crazy.
It's been good, knowing you, and I'm out.
Now, before we get into it, I want to have you travel back in time to September 22nd, 1995, the season premiere of this. We had an entire summer from the end of the last season to this. How excited were you for this season 3 premiere back in the day?
If I remember right, I think we had a watch party for this, and I think it was either at my house or at Brady's house
Yeah, I would not be
for
surprised.
for
Yeah.
this particular episode. But yeah, the anticipation was pretty fucking high. It was a huge deal to make sure that we got to watch this on time. Just like what is it, the Star Trek Best of Both Worlds season ender. It felt like this for us, for X-Files fans.
Yeah. And I think you had mentioned this on a previous episode of just how many conversations we all had over the summer as to how could Mulder have possibly gotten out of that? Like, well, what happened? And I don't think like today people understand kind of like the excitement and the feeling for like a new show that you kind of had back in those days, especially with streamers when most streamers drop everything all at once and everything. You kind of miss that buildup of anticipation, and this was quite the ride to get here. And one last thing I will mention about season 3 is, generally speaking, this is the season where people start saying, okay, peak X-Files is here. Seasons 3, 4, and 5 are generally considered the best X-Files seasons. So we're now getting into what should be, hopefully, banger after banger after banger. We'll see upon a rewatch, but let's go ahead and get into it. The Blessing Way, directed by R.W. Goodwin, written by Chris Carter himself. Take it away.
It gets right back into where we were at the end of season 2, where there's a fire just pouring out of this trailer. There's military armed men everywhere. The cigarette smoking guy is there yelling about, where's Mulder? The poor Indian kid that gave him a ride just didn't say anything, just gets the shit beat out of him.
Oh, I know.
Then they go back to like his grandfather's house and they get the shit beat out of him while they're looking for Mulder. But they don't find anything. They don't find the file tape that Mulder had that they were looking for. And so they just leave him for some reason. No. Anyway, let's skip over why that happened.
It's Chris Carter writing the episode. That's why.
Well, okay. I mean, I'm the secret sauce is that we record a few of these at a time. So I've seen a little bit into the future, and I remember a little bit into the past. But whenever there's somebody that needs watching, they're always there. There's always an agent, like, hovering around the hospital room or sitting in a car across the street. But you have the last people that saw Mulder alive in these files you want to get at, but you don't leave anybody to watch, sit around watching them at all. Okay.
Yeah.
But yeah, Chris Carter makes sense. Scully shows up and then just goes out to wherever this fire was at. All she sees is smoke pouring out of the hole, and she just starts screaming to the surrounding bluffs, Mulder!
Yeah, I wrote that down in my notes. Mulder! Multiple exclamation points.
And then we get the title screen.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it was a good prologue to sort of juice you back into, okay, the summer is over. They give you that quick sort of recap of what went down at the, was it Anasazi, I think was the name of the last episode. And yeah, like this prologue, I'm all in. I'm like, how in the hell is Mulder going to get out of this boxcar? That's my overriding sense as I'm watching this, is how does it get out of this boxcar?
So we get back to Scully is driving near the reservation at night and then is pulled over by a military chopper that just flies out of nowhere and then parks on the highway in front of her. And then takes, asks where the hell the files are at. And she has a physical copy of these files from the previous episode, the ones that were from the tape that were translated from the Navajo writing. And I found that it was kind of weird that they did it with the chopper instead of just having Skinner order her to turn the files over.
Yeah,
Like,
I guess, yeah, I hadn't even thought of that, but
I mean, she
yeah.
wasn't like so far from her duties at this point that she would have said like no. And I think she actually tries to. Well, anyway, that's a future spoiler. Won't get into that. Um,
Soldiers are like
Scully.
feeling her up too. They're like,
Oh yeah,
"Spread your legs." And there's like a tight close up of the soldier just putting his hand right up there. You got the files in there, Scully?
you know they're looking for that little tiny tape, and that could fit in a number of spots. So we cut to Scully getting suspended by some review board in Skinner's office.
Without pay or benefits due to
Yeah,
insubordination.
as she's getting dismissed, Skinner's all like, I don't want this to happen. There's this great line that I wrote down from it, but I don't want this to happen. I need to do this to protect you guys or something like that. And what was it? It was the first time Scully had said something really angry towards Skinner yet. It was with all due respect, sir. I think you overestimate your place in the chain of command. I loved
Yeah.
that line,
Yeah, I
and
wrote it down. Yeah.
he feeds it back to her later in the episode.
Yeah.
Like, why you gotta be a dick? It was a sick burn, dude.
Yeah, and the whole context here is everybody thinks Mulder is dead. So Scully thinks he's dead. I don't know why she didn't do a deeper dive inside that boxcar. Like she just
Well, I
walked
mean,
up, saw it firebomb, like, all right, he's dead. I would have thought she would have at least, if she would have assumed he was dead in there, she would try to get his body out. Like, but
I mean, there's smoke pouring out of the hole. There's like old charred alien meat smoke pouring out of the hole. So that would have been like vile without at least some sort of breathing apparatus, which she didn't have. I can understand why you wouldn't walk into a recently put out fire filled
right,
building.
but I would have waited till like the next morning or something once the alien
She
bodies
had to
have.
get pulled over by the chopper, and that wasn't going to happen if she was just going to sit there with like fanning the smoke. Come on,
Fair.
come on, voodoo. Um, there it cuts to this weird meeting that the cigarette smoking man is apparently a part of some sort of society of
The
rich
syndicate.
white guys that are all together, like making all these conspiracies, and he's convincing him the Mulder's dead, that the file, though they have the physical file, that the electronic version that Mulder had was found. He's just straight up lying to him. And then we get into this part that I really liked about the episode, and the next cup or episode as well, was the narration from the Navajo guy,
Oh, okay.
because they talk about the following the buzzards, because they end up finding Mulder's dead hand sticking out of some rocks, because the boys had found or seen buzzards, and it launches into this huge thing that buzzards are cowards, but they only show up when there's meat to eat that somebody else killed. Blah 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 blah. Blah. Well, they say they have that Mulder is near death, very very near death, and the only way that he could be pulled back to reality is to be put in this Dogan or Hogan or whatever they call that thing, and then call do this ritual where they bring back ancient spirits, and they need the ancient spirits to heal him. And while I love that scene, especially when he starts talking to the spirits in that scene, like telling him to come back, like his father and Deep Throat and things like that. Like, I'm looking at Mulder, I'm like, this dude, I've seen him so many times just on the brink of fucking death. Or maybe having been shot, he was infected with some
Yeah.
shit, the ice episode, like, he looked like shit in those other episodes. This one, he looked like dehydrated, but they needed spirits to get him back instead of just sending him to the hospital, get a couple IVs in him.
See, I wrote down that Mulder looked extremely sweaty.
Well, yeah, that was the effect they used, or other than the little pucker bullet wound thing on his or his upper chest, like, that was the only well, they spent the
Yeah,
budget elsewhere instead of
yeah.
makeuping him up.
He certainly didn't look near death. I think I like the concept of this scene. I don't think the effects held up very well at all. Like I was watching, I was like, this looks really bad. Like just the
When he
visual
was, like,
effects.
flying into the sky and stuff like that?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
Even when Deep Throat comes out and stuff, it just didn't hold up. Like the whole effects of it. But the idea is cool. I
I
like the
re
idea of it.
I enjoyed how they presented it, but yeah, it did kinda look like shit. I
Oh
got a
yeah.
note here that drunken Frohickey shows up at Scully's front door for a booty call, like,
I don't think it was for a booty call.
oh,
Uh,
come on, you don't just show up in the middle of the night wasted off your ass.
He's
And
sad his friend just died.
yeah, yeah, and there ain't nothing that helps that woe go away, like, you know,
Frohickey knows that Scully's too
rolling the
classy.
dice.
She's too classy of a woman to just give him a pity fuck in the middle of the night.
I think he was trying, brother.
Before we get to that, there's a couple notes that I had here. One of them was the vulture scene that you mentioned. This was something that bothered me as an adult while watching this show, and I wrote down, as a kid, I love this because there's like a shot and they just see like the hand underneath all the rocks, and you're like, oh wow. As a kid, I loved it. As an adult, I'm like, what? How? Like, how did he survive that? I mean, I guess they show later on. This is kind of a spoiler, but the aliens inside there are trying to like dig through the boxcar or something.
Yeah,
But I'm like, how the hell? Like, I didn't buy that he would have actually survived this. All these heavy, giant boulders on top of him. Didn't buy it as an adult. So just wanted to make that note. Didn't work for me this time.
I mean, I think he just followed whatever dirt tunnel that they dug
Yeah, yeah.
away from the boxcar.
I would have
Uh,
liked to have seen some sort of flashback, like while he was near death, of him getting into that or something, because it just didn't. It seemed
you hear
odd.
that? You hear that, or Chris Carter? Matthew wants to see the whole cut.
I do. I do. The other note that I have here is there is this really short, great scene with Scully where she shows after she thinks that Mulder's dead. She shows up at her mom's place crying, and she says her dad would not be proud of her. And that was just
Mhm.
another small moment where Gillian Anderson being able to really act with emotion really, really well. So
I would agree with that. That was the only of the episode stuff that we see where either Mulder or Scully are mixing in with their parents in the near future. That was really the only one that I believed. There's a couple of
yeah,
them where Mulder was hanging out with his mom, and I'm like, she has one good zing. Well, we'll get to it. She has one
yeah,
good line, but the rest of it's like, I don't believe that you guys are mother and son at all.
yeah. I didn't like that actress. I didn't think she was very good, but we'll get
All right, so drunken Frohickey shows up for a booty
there.
call. She lets him down lightly. We find out that through him that the thinker that had been leaking all of this information had been executed and was found in a landfill. We cut back to the holy people scene where Mulder floats up into the sky underneath his blanket of pine needles, and the dead are talking to him. So he has this really interesting conversation with Deep Throat, where Deep Throat doesn't need to lie about shit anymore. And then his dad shows up and is his dad basically. But he comes or we that's the scene where we see the aliens getting gassed.
Yeah.
His
Hydrogen
dad
cyanide.
he asks if his sister is there, and the dad's like, "No, now of all the dead spirits that are around here, your sister isn't among them." So it implies that his sister is not, in fact, dead.
Gives him purpose to keep on looking.
And
That's the
then
theme. A theme in this show is, and this goes through multiple seasons. Is Samantha is not dead. She's still out there somewhere, and that's what drives Mulder to try to find his sister.
well, yeah, it drives entire seasons worth of
Hmm.
content for sure. We get back to Skinner and Scully. I think was it this one where Scully like
She goes to the metal detector because
yeah.
she's been suspended, and so the guard at the front of the building is like, "Oh, they're making you come through the front door this time, right?" Obviously she doesn't normally have to go through metal detectors, and she walks through, and it goes beep beep beep. So he takes out the wand, and nothing happens. They're like, "Oh, that's weird." And then she goes talk to Skinner, which also doesn't go well.
And it was weird. I wrote that Skinner seems to be unsure if Scully is playing him about this tape, but spoilers, he had the tape the whole time. Which,
Yeah,
if you rewatch that episode, yeah, I don't know.
yeah, it's so weird because by this point in time, we as viewers are like, Skinner's a good guy. I mean, he's shown enough times that he's a good guy and helps them out. But then they'll still do these scenes where he acts like a complete asshole to them, where like Mulder and Scully will ask for his help, but he's like, "Fuck you, go home, take a rest, let us do our job," and stuff like that. And so this was another one of those scenes where he's like, "I'm not helping you. Bring me the tape that Mulder died for, and then maybe we'll talk. Otherwise, you're not even supposed to be in this building. Just go
Yeah,
home."
this was the scene where he threw that line back in her face. Like I'm because she brings him evidence that there's the thinker got killed, wants him to compare ballistics against what the dad got killed with, so that
Yeah.
she can prove that there's a murder conspiracy going on, and Mulder might have been also killed by these people, and he
And that
just
Mulder didn't
stonewalls her.
kill his dad, because remember,
Yeah.
everyone
Oh,
still
right,
thinks
right,
Mulder
right.
killed his dad, and so she's trying to exonerate him to say, hey, he didn't actually murder his dad.
And Skinner just straight up says, "No, no, you had that killer zinger like a day ago, and I'm still pissed about that. So no, I ain't doing nothing.
I
We'll let the
love
Baltimore PD handle this."
love like she leaves all sad, and then immediately cigarette smoking man walks in and is like, that bitch has the tape. Get the fucking tape from her, because they all
and
believe she's got it.
and then she goes back through, or she goes back by the front gate, and or where the metal detector was. And for some reason, she's just like, I'd like you to scan me again, please." And she figures out that there's something that's setting off the metal detector right in the back of her neck.
That'd
So
be
she goes
creepy.
to she what?
That'd be real creepy.
Goes to a doctor. Doctor X-rays it. Says, yeah, there's something in there. Probably a little piece of buckshot. But he takes it out or extracts it. Looks at it very very closely, and sees that it looks like a computer chip.
Yeah. And that guy's like, I know what I think it looks like, but you better have a look at it.
And then for some reason we need to remember. Well, for some reason we need to remember that Scully has a sister, and she goes to visit her, and her sister's like trying to convince her to do like you need to come over to because her sister's a witch, right? Or a pagan or
Yeah,
something
she's
of
into all
that
that.
persuasion. And she's like basically trying to convince her to, you need to set science aside for just a moment and do weird shit in order to remember what happened to you when you were abducted a while back. And I thought, she was trying to convince her to go do like some witch like ceremony or spell casting. It's like, no, no, just trying to go do regression hypnosis, which back in the '90s must have been so fucking bizarre to ask somebody to do, as it would have been akin to witchcraft.
Yeah.
Um,
She gets
then
when she
she
gets to that doctor or whatever, and she goes through that whole spiel. Basically, she's basically like, "I remember a man taking me and stuff." It's very, very vague. Like, she doesn't really give any solid details about anything, but she
but
freaks
she
out when
is
the guy comes in.
recalling that something is happening.
Right.
And then
Yeah.
she gets touched by the doctor and she wakes up and she's like, "I don't want to do this anymore." And she leaves.
Yeah.
Like doesn't want to go down that rabbit hole any further than what she has, and instead she goes back to her apartment and sees Skinner coming out of her apartment building.
Mhm.
I wrote a note immediately after this. Spirit Space Molder talks to Scully in her sleep.
I wrote
That
down Mulder comes to Scully in a dream. Super weird.
It looked stupid. It looked
Yeah.
real bad.
Now, we should point out, like, the what's happening while Scully's going through all this, Mulder's getting better and better. So, the Native Americans, the Navajos are bringing him back. I made a comment, like, the main dude, Albert, I think is his name. He brings a bunch of food to Mulder and it looks like cornbread. I wrote that cornbread looks fucking fantastic. So whoever made that on set probably did an amazing job, and I would have scarfed that down. There's this cool moment about they bring him, like, the kids or something bring him a bunch of sunflower seeds because he was asking for them during his worst
I
fevers.
didn't notice that.
Yeah, so he gets better, and then somehow comes to Scully in a dream, and
Mhm.
which makes her think that he's gonna be okay or he's still alive or something. Is very weird. It's very Chris Carter.
And then the new Deep Throat, one of the members of this syndicate, goes and visits Scully and warns her in a bunch of bullshit ways that somebody close to her is going to kill her. He uses the same speech patterns that X or Deep Throat used on Mulder. Just sounds like complete bullshit in order to like look at one hand while you're committing sleight of hand
Yeah,
with the other.
because she's at
But it,
Mulder's dad's funeral.
yeah, and she thinks it gets to her a little bit because she starts wondering who close to her has been sent to kill her, if that is actually going to happen.
Yeah.
Mulder goes and talks to his mom about dad, and she's just like, "Huh, leave me alone. I have a headache." It
I
was
don't remember anything.
anything. Mom, you were married to him for many, many years. Surely he'd had friends of. No, I've forgotten all of it by now.
So
Okay.
many years ago, Fox.
Then her sister calls and says, "Hey, chickadee, I'm on my way over to hang out and talk about this hypnosis thing." And Scully all of a sudden has to leave instead, and she does that thing that we used to do in the '90s, where you'd call somebody and say, "Hey, yeah, come over," and then they would leave their house, and you'd call them back, and you'd beg their answering machine for them to pick up, but they never do because they're outside of their house and on their way over. That happens, which I thought it made me chuckle a little bit.
Yeah.
She goes outside, and Skinner just pulls up outside, says, "Get in the car,"
Yeah, yeah,
and
but
she just does.
we should set this up just a little bit. So, like you said, when she, I think the guy is called the well manicured man. That's what he's known as in the show, as part of the syndicate. When he tells Scully that, hey, you're in danger, like, they're coming to kill you now, because he's basically like, they don't think you actually have the tape anymore. Like, the only reason you're not dead yet is because they thought you had the tape, but now they're sure you don't have the tape. And he basically straight up tells her, he's like, look, we're a shadow government. We fuck everything up and we'll murder anybody. And I'm warning you, they're coming to kill you. It'll be one of two ways. You're either going to be like in the garage and two dudes are going to show up and murder you in the garage, or someone close to you is going to basically fuck you over and murder you. And so when she sees Skinner, that's when she's like, "Oh God, that's why Skinner's being an asshole. He's coming to kill me." But she gets in the car with him anyway.
See, I read that scene kind of. I don't understand why she got in the fucking car with him, but when he pulled up and they went to where was it Mulder's apartment? It seemed like
Yes,
to
because
talk.
Skinner goes, we got to go somewhere private to talk. And they go to Mulder's apartment. And I actually wrote down there, that's got to be the most watched place in the
Right?
history of watched like apartment
Yeah.
buildings. Why would you go to Mulder's apartment? Because it's just like I didn't understand. I did not understand why they went there. But the well manicured man, when he's talking to Scully at the funeral, he has this really great line because she's like, what do you guys do, or what do you, how are you involved in this?" And he goes, "Well, we predict the future." And he's like, "And the best way to predict the future is to invent it." I thought that was a cool line, also. So kudos to Chris Carter on that line.
And so they get to his apartment. She immediately draws down on the back of Skinner. And what I wrote was Scully is taking no chances with shape shifting Skinner because she had
That's true.
that shape shifting problem at the hotel room where she got body slammed to that table.
Yep.
And so I thought maybe she thought it was a shapeshifter again. I don't know. But she immediately draws down on him, says, "If you fucking even slightly twitch in my direction, I'm going to shoot you in the back of the head." She makes him sit on his hands, and they sit there and start having a conversation about what's going on. Uh, Scully's sister shows up at her apartment and immediately gets killed by Krychek, who looks like Christian Slater. What is up with that Krychek haircut?
I don't know. I wrote "fucking weasel Krychek." That's how I describe him. Fucking weasel Krychek. And I love when he like kicks the body over, and he's just like, "Oh no,
Oh,
we
no.
got to get out of here."
Oh, man.
Got the wrong girl.
Like, I mean, it doesn't matter that much, but yeah, for what they were there to kill somebody, and it was a weird scene. Like, I don't know why he would have regretted it, knowing what I know about Krychek now. Maybe they just didn't know it about
Well,
Krychek
I
then.
think I think at the time, like, because remember the context. There's a bunch of scenes in this episode with the syndicate or the consortium or whatever. All of the people there are kind of like questioning cigarette smoking man. They're like, "You're sending these people. Why don't you send our people to get this shit done?" And cigarette smoking man's like, "No, no, no, no. I got this handled. Blah blah blah." And they're like, "Well, you said you had the tape. Show it to us." "Oh, I'll get it to you
Oh yeah,
tomorrow.
tomorrow.
I'll get it to you tomorrow. It's under lock and key right now." Blah blah blah. And cigarette smoking man has been just panicked trying to find this stupid disk drive with
Yeah, he
whatever's on it.
loses it on Skinner when Skinner's like, "I may know where this tape is," and he starts bargaining with him. It's like, "You don't fucking bargain
Yeah.
with nobody. All these other people, they got my number and they can kill me, but you are my bitch. So don't
Yeah.
even start
Yeah, yeah.
with that stuff."
So that's like the whole context of what's going on here. And then basically, well, I won't spoil how this one ends yet. So how does this one end? How does Skinner get back into a position of semi power here?
He somebody stands in front of Mulder's door and they could see the shadow of the feet underneath the door. And then that Skinner uses that opportunity to take not sit on his hands, take his gun out, and have a Mexican standoff with Scully, and then we got to be continued
Yeah.
again.
Quick draw McGraw over there. Man, he pulled that gun out fast.
He did, but
Yeah.
I mean, you don't get to what is it, associate director, assistant director,
Assistant
whatever.
director.
You don't get that far without being able to,
Yeah.
pull a
I mean, he
gun
was in
every time.
Vietnam too, remember? He's like, I got, well, I don't remember what episode that was in the past, but he does something cool, and he's like, I was in Nam. Now, he doesn't do very well in the next episode, but we'll get there. So, yeah, that is the blessing way. What are your thoughts on the first episode of season 3?
I thought it was really a good starter to the season. Like in review, when I'm going over my notes, I'm like, okay, that was kind of bullshitty, and but when I was watching through it, the second or third time, however many times I've actually watched it, um, I enjoyed it. I enjoyed it the whole time. I was chomping at the bit to figure out where this season was going to go, and this was a good way to kind of land that for me.
Yeah, I agree. I think overall I like this episode primarily because of some of the lines that were in it. Like Frohickey when he shows up for the non-booty call at
Sure. He
Scully's
was there
house.
to get laid.
Um, because she was like, how much have you had to drink?" And he like holds up an entire bottle of whiskey or something. And she's like, "Come on in." But Frohickey has that kind of moment where he says he's talking about how much he liked Mulder, and he's like, "Mulder was a redwood among mere sprouts," which I thought was a really cool thing because all of the lone gunmen respect Mulder so much. They basically like idolize this guy, and so he and Frohickey makes that sort of comment. He's like, "So I guess you're taking over now, right, Scully? Like you're gonna carry the banner and do all this stuff." And Scully's like, "I got fired, dude. Like
Yeah.
there's nothing.
Ain't
I'm
my
out.
job anymore.
I'm out of the game, buddy, and I'm still not gonna give you this ass." So, but yeah, I thought the last like 10, 15 minutes were really good, sort of tension building. I guess it's been so long since I watched this episode. I didn't expect another to be continued because we just got one at the season finale of season two, and now we got one here. And I was like, geez, man, this is normally X Files episodes don't do this long of an arc, a 3 episode arc at least at this point. But yeah, I like this episode. I think I was a little disappointed in all of the kind of like goofy effects work, the goofy dream. Maybe if it looked better, I wouldn't have as much problem with it. But I was really taken aback by the really shoddy effects work of some of that stuff, and it kind of pulled me out of it a bit, even though I like the concept of it all. So yeah, I dug this one. I was again as soon as it said to be continued, I immediately watched the next one because I'm like, I got to see where this goes.
Yeah.
So for sure. Okay, trivia and tidbits from IMDb and Wikipedia here. Series creator Chris Carter felt this was one of his favorite episodes to write, as he found it interesting to explore how the character of Fox Mulder would react to the death of his father. Carter had recently lost a parent himself when he began work on the episode. However, David Duchovny was disappointed in this episode as he felt he didn't really have all that many emotions to work through. And that seems to be a common refrain from David Duchovny. There was another episode, I think, in season two, where one of the things was he was not he wanted it to be like his um, um, Beyond the Sea, but it turned out not to be. Like he's David Duchovny is searching for stuff in this show to really showcase his chops, and it seems like he feels like he's not getting it in a lot of these episodes. Frank Spotnitz said of the episode, the expectations were very high coming after a summer's worth of anticipation to see how Mulder got out of the boxcar. You don't say, Frank. You don't say. We knew we had to answer that question and still leave an intriguing enough dilemma at the end of the show to bring viewers back for the third and final part. I also thought it was a big gamble to do all the Indian mysticism stuff. I thought a lot of people would not necessarily respond to that. So I was nervous about that, but very excited about the Scully storyline and the way that all that played out with Mulder and Skinner. And I liked all the Native American stuff.
Yeah. I've
Again,
seen it like way overdone in some shows, but this was respectful. I
yeah,
think it
yeah,
holds up.
I liked it quite a bit, and I think just flashing forward to next episode, or maybe no, it was this episode I think, where one of the pieces of trivia was that Native American population actually had a problem with Anasazi because some of the stuff that was shown in that wasn't really representative of Native American culture. And then for this one, Chris Carter actually went with the Navajo and basically did an 8 hour, like the blessing way ceremony and stuff. He's like, yeah, I was basically sitting cross legged for 8 hours straight doing all kinds of weird stuff in order to get better representation for how Native American culture actually is. So I think you feel that in this episode for sure. um, Visual effects producer Matt Beck considered the sequence where Fox Mulder has a vision of Deep Throat and his father to be the most difficult of the season, but he does not explain why. um, I don't know, maybe it was the effects that, I mean, Mulder literally just lays there when Deep Throat's talking to him. He only talks to his dad, right? I don't think he says a word to Deep Throat.
No, he just looks at him.
Yeah. This is John Neville's first appearance in the series as the well-manicured man. The character was originally designed to just appear in this episode and the one following, Paperclip, but he went down so well with fans that he returned for more episodes. And here's that trivia I mentioned. Chris Carter attended Navajo chants and rituals to make sure he was accurate in his depiction of them. Members of the community had spotted some discrepancies in the episode Anasazi. He attended these not just as an observer, but also as a participant. Carter was greatly honored to be asked to attend such a ceremony, though he admitted it was incredibly painful to sit cross-legged on the ground for 8 hours. Mark Snow slightly changed the piano melody from the opening theme music and the corresponding shortened theme in the credits from the first 2 seasons in this episode. The music would remain unchanged for several years. And I gotta admit, I didn't even notice that. Did you notice
No,
any music change?
no, not at all. And I actually listened to the theme.
Yeah. And this is the first episode where Mitch Pileggi is credited under also starring in the opening credits. So we know that we're gonna get a lot of Skinner going forward. He's gonna hopefully, we'll see, to be continued. We'll see if he becomes one of the staunch allies of our two intrepid FBI agents, who really are not FBI agents any longer. Mulder's certainly not. Scully got suspended, no pay, no benefits, and then we're gonna see in next episode with Paperclip how they get out of that. So, any other final thoughts that you have on this episode?
No, no, just let's go on to the next one.
All right, everybody, don't forget to hit that like and subscribe. Come back to Outpost Unknown next Friday, and we will talk Paperclip.